is this my intuition or just fear in disguise? Now, so many of us make many decisions in our life, from career, relationship, to changing location, travel, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. So, what I'm really looking at in this masterclass is when we make decisions that don't work out, we tend to lose, and it's constant, we tend to lose trust within ourselves. So, I'm speaking into how can I start to trust my decision making more, as opposed to being fearful of making the wrong decision again. So, understanding the root of your decision making patterns helps you to become less reactive, more conscious, and ultimately more empowered. This is very much about doing more of the inner work around decision making and what really motivates us behind our decisions. So, what influences the decisions we make? Now, we've got all these different areas that will influence a decision. So, the first one being, I mean, this is in no order, but just a list of what really influences our decisions. So, we've got the conscious mind. So that part of us that just knows, that has an understanding of stuff, that is intellectual, that's the part that rationalizes, thinks logically and strategically as well. Then we've got the unconscious mind. Now, this is more automatic. This is more where we actually, we don't really know what that we're making decisions from this place until we start to self-reflect and go to therapy, or become aware of parts of us that we may have been unaware of. So ways that we can do that is through understanding our emotional triggers, our identity, so our belief systems, and our sense of self. So sense of self of like, who am I? What gives me value? What sense of self is really interesting because sometimes if we are caught up in being motivated by the external, by things outside of us, by other people, by status, by external validation, we lose the sense of self because we're reliant on others to make us okay, to make us feel valuable. So, sense of self is this ability to know who I am and to know that I'm an individual from other people that has value, and doesn't need to have external validation to feel that value. However, in saying that, we do rely on each other as humans. So there's parts of us that where yes, we are connected in that sense of I need to see my own value as well as other people need to see my value as well. So then I can connect with them too from that place. So fear is another influence. So a powerful motivator that can lead to either like avoiding something or impulsively choosing. It can also lead to the fear-based decision making, which we'll go into. Unmet needs, so trying to meet a need without going for it directly. So many of us often make decisions based on unmet needs, and if we don't actually understand that, we will we'll go indirectly for it. So sometimes we'll manipulate people, we'll manipulate ourselves in ways too. Like we will we will try to meet this need by indirectly, and I'll go into more of that. The ability to self-reflect. So if you do not have the ability to self-reflect, then making decisions will what influences our decisions we make will sorry, I've just there's some noise in the background that's distracting me a little bit. Ability to self-reflect. So if I can't self-reflect, then my decisions are going to be made just with no feedback coming in. So I will, if I can't think about, okay, what mistake did I make? Where take responsibility for myself, take responsibility for my decisions, then I'll probably be someone going into the world where I blame other people for the decisions that I make. Learning from mistakes. So again, that comes with the ability to self-reflect. So gaining insight from past errors builds better judgment. And then we've got feedback from others. So, often we can be given feedback from others. So it can either be other people's fear, or sometimes it can be other people's perspective, which can be quite beneficial. And when we get feedback from others, we do need to be careful who we get it from. But if we do get people's projections of fear, we can also get curious about that as well. So we can get people's fear, and then we can also get different perspective from someone maybe that's been in the position that we've been in and can see your blind spots. So that's, coaches and therapists and that sort of thing are people who could probably support you in that. And then emotional awareness is another thing that influences our decisions. So understanding that we're feeling what we're feeling just reduces reactive decision making. So if we know how we feel and what decisions we're making, so if we will make less impulsive decisions, less decisions based on just the immediate feeling that we have. So if I feel really anxious because I want an outcome to be faster, and then I try to achieve that outcome really fast, what I might find is that I make mistakes along the way. But if I'm really anxious and then identify that I'm anxious, I may ground and implement something to self-regulate, then continue on with the thing that I want to do. So then less mistakes will be made. Okay, so how do you know when you're making a fear-based decision? This is what I want to give you today. So some examples of how we actually can identify this. So often when we're making fear-based decisions, it can feel heavy and forced. You feel pressure, dread, or like you're pushing something that doesn't want to move. You say yes to a job you don't want because you're scared you won't get another offer. So that's a fear-based decision. There's no flow or ease. Everything feels like an uphill battle, and small things start going wrong. Examples, you're trying to move in with a partner quickly, but logistics keep falling apart and your body feels tense every step of the way. What I want you to do as you're listening to this masterclass is think about a goal that you're working towards and align this information with that goal. Okay. Other ways that we know it's fear-based, it feels overwhelming or draining. Now, I'm going to differentiate between a decision that we're making that was a yes at first, and then fear comes in, and then a decision that we make solely based on fear. They're two different things, and I'll explain that coming into this. So when something feels overwhelming and draining, instead of excitement or clarity, it's important to know that when we're reaching our goals, it's not always going to be exciting and clear and that sort of thing. But if you're starting off with overwhelm and feeling drained, then there's something there that needs to be, we need to get curious about. You may commit to a big project, of course, not because you're inspired, but because you are afraid of being left behind or irrelevant. So see the motivator behind the decision. That's what we're really looking at as well. It creates conflict or chaos rather than creating resolution or direction. The decision causes more problems internally and externally. So you rush into a relationship or investment, and soon there are arguments or unexpected setbacks. These are signals that there's something out of alignment in that decision, and that there's been fear that has fear or unmet needs that are coming in there, or something subconscious that's not been addressed. You're trying to fix something quickly. Anytime we want that speedy kind of fast-paced, fear wants quick relief, not long-term alignment. So you impulsively move cities to escape feeling stuck, only to create the same pattern in new places. That's how we know when it's a fear-based thing too, because we may run away from somewhere and we still have the same problems. Why don't I trust myself? So many of us who have grown up with any sort of it's not just trauma, it's also like, yes, trauma, but any sort of parenting around not teaching us what our needs and wants are and that they're valuable. So if we were really influenced by the family decision and values, and we were never taught boundaries, we will find it difficult at first to trust our decision making, because a lot of our decision making from when we're young will come from places like wanting to get out of home, wanting to build wealth, wanting to build status, wanting to create the opposite of what we actually have had in the past. And when we want to create the opposite, what we're doing is we're running from the current experience that we have. And I'll go into more of that. So why do we stop trusting ourselves? What happens is we make past choices led by pain or regret, and self-trust can then erode. So career changes or stagnation, relationships or dating patterns, financial or business decisions, who we let in emotionally, hobbies and creative expression, major life moves, and commitment. Now, I wanted to talk about how I made fear-based decisions myself, and I stopped trusting myself because of it. I thought that I was quite, when it came to making decisions when I was young, I thought I knew it all. I had this I was quite driven and motivated. I was like, I know exactly what I need to do to become successful in life. And I thought what I needed to do was go to university, then move to where work was, get that job, work my way up in the job, and have a partner, and then I'd be really happy. So I was making decisions based on external validation at that point. And I had not explored my inner world. I had not explored who I am, my sense of self, my identity, my values, my needs. So I wasn't taught that. Many of us are not taught that. So what I did was I made these decisions based on how I felt, because I would go from one job to the next because nothing felt right. And I would base these decisions also on unmet needs of mine, which I didn't know I had. And so what I did is, like, I started in enviroscience and I went from one job to the next to the next. And I would move around getting these jobs, thinking that it was my job that wasn't satisfying, and not realizing that it was actually the way I was making decisions. And it was that I wasn't really identifying my inner motivator. So what was my internal motivator? And that's where our values come in. That's where our needs come in. That's where our limiting beliefs come in. And so it wasn't until I started looking at those things that I broke that pattern of going from one thing to the next to the next. And then I started to make decisions more in alignment of who I am authentically, who I am outside of the conditioning of, oh, if you get a job and go to university, you'll be successful and happy. That's conditioning that we've all been fed. So that's just a personal story around what happened for me. So what influences our decision? Now, there's going to be some examples of this, which I hope support you. To make empowered decisions, we need to understand what shapes them. And so coming back to my experience, and I'm sharing this just as an example, is what shaped my experience in my home dynamic was that I grew up with very traditional, not very traditional, like they were quite traditional though, Greek parents that wanted the best for me and thought that what the best for me was to go to have an education, go to university, and they get a really well-paid job. And that sounds great, and that's kind of what they were also fed too. And so that's what I was basing my decisions on, that external validation. And here's an example of we often recreate what feels familiar, even if it's painful. This is the same for any relationship dynamic that we go into that's a pattern. Like often we don't see the patterns until we get probably into our mid-30s, late 30s, 40s, 50s, and so on, because we've lived enough to see these patterns. So chasing achievement to feel worthy, choosing emotionally distant partners, pursuing status or security out of fear, not desire. So that's just an example of how we can make unconscious decisions based on past experiences or home dynamics. And a lot of people who come to therapy I uncover this as well and realize, oh, okay, I see how my past has influenced where I am today, or my home life, or the partner I chose. So that there's influence there. And it can be confronting at the same time. So it's not easy to look at this stuff. It can be uncomfortable. Okay, another example is escaping discomfort. Sometimes we make decisions just because we want the relief. Now, I've done this as a human, like many of us have probably done this, but I did it unconsciously. And so often we can do it not realizing we're doing it until later on we see maybe we get into a relationship that's not good for us. But before we got into that relationship, we were feeling really depressed and anxious, and maybe we were feeling lonely. And so then we find ourselves getting into a relationship that just wasn't that great for us because we dismissed the red flags because we were desperate for that connection. So craving a partner to escape loneliness, launching a business to avoid burnout, spending impulsively to feel in control. These are some ways that we can escape the discomfort. Struggle to hold uncertainty. So this is the tension that I often talk about. The tension of achieving a goal is uncertain, and sometimes we want to rush out of it and make rush decisions to avoid discomfort. So settling too soon, ignoring red flags, making choices based on fantasy, not reality. So again, that speaks into depending on where we are, our state of being and mind and our mental health will really impact our choices in life. Signs of fear-based decisions. So fear-based decisions are usually urgent, heavy, or chaotic. Sometimes they can be this way. So they can feel like anxiety, urgency, dread, despair, or numbness. So yes, they can be chaotic, but then you've also got the despair and numbness as well. So sometimes they can come from a place of, we can be feeling really quite down and heavy and numb. And then someone comes along, and this is like a relationship or maybe even a career comes along, and it's exciting, and it feels like it gives us a bit of life. And so we may make a decision to move towards that because we don't feel like we have that within ourselves at this point. And that's not always the most healthiest decision, because there might be some red flags that we miss along the way. So common thought patterns: if I don't say yes now, I'll miss my chance. That's a scarcity mindset. Everyone else is fine with this. I must be overreacting, minimizing our own experience to fit in. I'm already invested too much to back out. This is very much like I can't give up even though things aren't working out. So we push, and then chaos can happen around that. This might be the best I can do. So having low confidence in our ability to achieve the thing that we want. I just need to escape this pain now. So often if we're just really suffering in an experience, we will want to get out. Our flight response comes in. So examples of this: staying in relationships that feel wrong because loneliness feels scarier. Quitting your job impulsively for freedom, than panicking over money. I can tell you that I've done both of those things. So there is, this is why I became so, I started to master decision making, because I did these things and then I've self-reflected and looked at the mistakes that I made, so then I could do something differently next time. Okay, how do we create aligned decisions? I just want to see what I have after this. Okay, great. So this is almost done. So bear with me just while we go through this. Keep in mind the goal that you have as we go through this. So what we need to do is slow down firstly, and this can be really difficult. And this could be difficult if we are in a panic or in the fight-flight mode. If we're more in a shutdown mode, slowing down might not necessarily be needed. More movement might be needed. So the slow down is more for if I find myself more in a fight-flight mode. If I'm in more of a shutdown, I would skip the slow down and I'd go to a check-in. So what you want to do is first slow down and then check in. What do I notice in myself? So if I have a goal, if I'm really clear on a goal that I have, and we'll get to this other part actually I might get to this now, I'll come back to that. if I'm really clear of a goal and it's a yes, I always say if it's a hell yes, I felt like this is what I want, it's a yes. There's a pull towards this thing. What I know about this thing is that it is more likely coming from your authentic self, your intuition, or your curiosity as well. And curiosity lives at the top of the ladder that I show people with polyvagal theory. And that's where we're grounded, we're curious, we're creative. So if we've got a curiosity towards something and it feels light and it feels good when we first saw this thing or when this idea came to us, that's a really good indicator that that's a yes decision. That's something to move towards. What can happen though is it can be very similar to our impulsive decisions as well. So if I have an addiction to something, the yes can be also a pull towards. But the difference between the two is one has the consequence is much worse, and it has more of a chaotic cycle that you'll find. So it will create, so that the impulse will be, yes, I want that thing if it's more addiction based. It will be rationalized and justified. There will be people giving you feedback to say, hey, I don't think this is such a good idea, or do you think maybe you need some support and help? So there will be information to show you that that's an impulsive yes. It's a more of an addictive tendency. There's no plan in it as well. And generally, the consequences and the fallback of the yes is quite high. And we lose relationships and we have conflict in our life. So that's how we know that's an impulsive yes. But if it's a more intuitive yes, you'll see it as you'll have this idea that drops in. You'll have this opportunity that comes in and it will feel like a yes, that sounds good. I really want to do that. It will feel light. And then maybe after that, fear may come in. And that's why we need to know our fears. When fear comes in after that, that is not an indicator to not go for what you want. It's an indicator to look at the fear and to address the fear, process anything that needs processing, and then bring as with the information you get from the fear, because the fear is resistance. It's a part of us that's scared to get what we want. So let's say that you have a yes towards an opportunity to create your own business or to work for someone else's business that's exciting to you. And then you have fear come in. You want to address that fear because that's the resistance. So a part of you is scared that wants to be heard. Once we can hear that part, it will have needs, values, wants that we need to address. So there's this stepping stone between actually going towards it. And it might be a boundary you may need to express when you go to this work. So let's say the fear is I'll lose myself in that job because I'm not good at giving boundaries. So then what I would do is I would understand my boundaries in that, identify them, and then I'd go ahead towards that job or that career or that business that you might work for with that information. So taking action towards it. So having boundaries in place, being very clear about what your big picture goal is, being very clear about your motivators, and then moving forward from that place. So this is why decision making isn't just as simple as like a yes and then moving forward. If it's a no, you will feel heavy. You will feel as though you have no choice. I think I've made a spelling mistake there, sorry. So you'll feel you have no choice. It will feel heavy. It will feel powerless. It will feel a bit despair. Like, I don't really want to do this, but I have to do this. It often, yeah, it doesn't excite us. It just feels like nothing, like numb maybe. So that's a no. That's how we know it's a no. A maybe. What if it's a maybe? Okay, so what if we get an opportunity or idea and it's like a bit of a maybe? That's when we know that it's not a no, it's not a yes. So what we want to do is get curious about it with caution. I say with caution because the maybe might be that there's a part that's not aligned with you, but there's a part that is. So what I want to do is I want to get curious about this decision, this opportunity, this idea that's come up, and I want to gain more clarity. So have clarity on what you want. So before that, knowing your boundaries and needs and proceeding with caution. This can be then turned into a yes or a no. It's important to stay grounded in it. Now, I've had this recently with a friend that I met that I was like, it feels like a maybe, like I'm not sure, I'm unsure about this situation. And as I got to know them more with my boundaries and what I had an understanding of, and I expressed my boundaries to them, that shifted to a yes. So the maybe can be coming from fears that we have to express our authenticity as well. So that's why we proceed with caution. We don't turn it into a yes unless we have that caution in place. And then it might turn into a yes. But then maybe, what if I express my boundaries and I got to know this person more, it may have turned into a no. So this is where the maybes can come in useful, because then we can understand who we are, what we want, and express that. And that person that we express it to will either lean in, or maybe it's not in alignment with them and their needs. So important to stay grounded in this whole process of decision making. We don't want to be making decisions from a place of fear. We want to be making it from this place of groundedness and presence. So that's super important. So coming back to how do we create aligned decisions? So we've got number one, slow down. Number two, and this is in, I guess, no order as well. Check in. What do I notice in myself from when I came up with this opportunity or idea to where I am now? Maybe like a week has passed and I'm feeling a little anxious. So understanding where I am, where my nervous system's at. What am I fearful of? What's coming up for me? What am I fearful of? And then regulate. So regulating can really support you to get to know yourself outside of your conditioning. So get curious. We've got to become regulated to get curious a lot of the times. Sometimes we don't need to be completely regulated, just have our observer on board. Clarity. So what we have with, sorry, I just admitted. Identify your goal, big picture goal. So clarity is super important to really understand yourself in that space and have that clarity. Identify your resistance. So this is with the help maybe with a therapist or, however way you could do it. You might journal, but it's super important to identify your resistance when making decisions, because if it's a yes and then fear comes up and you give up on that decision, what you've given up on is something that may have been really aligned with you, but the resistance and the fear that came up caused you to give up on it. So the resistance is actually key. It's everything. I think I've done a YouTube video on resistance, a masterclass. So I recommend watching that. If I was to take steps towards this goal from a place of caring for my fear and not allowing it to rule my decisions, what would I do? That's a question that you can ask yourself. So if I care for my fear and don't let it rule my decisions, what would I be doing with this situation? So that's for those of you who already know your goals. And then get support, outside perspective, someone you trust and that is also pursuing goals. Super important that they're also pursuing their own goals, so they know when they're maybe projecting their own fears onto you, or they're also they have the ability to self-reflect as well. No, triggers will try to pull you back into fear-based decisions. It's important to hold the urge and tension to make fear-based decisions. So this is the, have I got it here? Sitting in the tension. Sitting in the tension, those of you who work with me, I talk about this often. And so this is where we know what we want, we've got the goal, we've got the opportunity, and now it's a yes as well. And then we've gone, all right, we've got all the information, we've got the plan together. Now what we need to do is sit in the tension of not having that thing yet. And that's the hardest part of breaking past patterns, past traumas, past outcomes that are not serving us anymore, to move towards the new thing, the new outcome that we want. So I see it as a rites of passage. This is like a rites of passage towards achieving a goal that's aligned to your authentic self, so outside of your conditioning. And why it's a rites of passage, it's because it's a new identity, a new way of being. It's breaking free from limiting beliefs, and or bringing them closer, and still being courageous enough to move towards what you want. So what holding the tension means, it's like I've got a plan and I'm not going to deviate from that plan unless I sit in a grounded, present place and reflect on why I'm shifting these, maybe like the plan that I have. Because if you're feeling anxious, and you are finding it really hard to hold the tension, you might want to bypass and quickly make a decision to make yourself feel better. And that's what we want to avoid, because if we do that, often what can happen is it will lead to misalignment, the outcome that we don't tend to want. So the growth that happens here is important for when we achieve your goals. So the other part of this is the growth that you get in that tension actually supports you when you've achieved your goal. Often we think achieving the goal is going to fix everything. And this is the kind of the challenge that people can come into, is they believe that achieving this goal is going to fix everything. But what needs to happen is the tension in between. That's where our growth happens. That's where our evolution happens, to be able to really enjoy that goal that we want to achieve, to be that new person, to be aligned with that goal. Here's what I mean. If I'm like, oh, I really want to make lots of money, so what I'm going to do is take this big risk and spend my life savings on an investment because I want to make lots of money. And so I might just put all my money on some sort of investment and think that that's just going to create this big wealth. And then I put it on there and I lose my money. Let's say the investment didn't work out like I thought it would. What has happened there is we've kind of gone from, we wanted that quick fix. We wanted to bypass the discomfort of maybe creating that wealth in more of a sustainable way that's not taking such a big risk. And so it can vary with those decisions. So in the sitting of the tension, we've become clear of the plan. You've got your supports in place. You've got all these things in place. You want to have your self-care, healthy habits, and your support, taking care of your nervous system to stay motivated where possible, and to also take care of your nervous system to not make quick manic decisions or chaotic decisions. Okay, so there's a lot in that. So we're now at questions. Does anyone have any questions around this? It can be around your goal, if you have a goal, or I would love for you to share where you are in this. Like, is there a decision that you're looking at making at the moment? Has an opportunity come up? Do you have an idea? If anyone would like to share.
Hi, Thelma. I'm happy to go. So sorry I was late, but I got a good part of that. Yeah, this is really poignant for me at the moment because my contract is ending at the end, well, basically this time next week, and I've been given a bridging extension for the work that I'm doing for 3 months, but I've had to also look at other options, and it's looking at other options. I now have 3 possible scenarios. And what I usually do is it's a very much, it comes from a fear base, but also from thinking about people pleasing place, like I don't want to let people down. If they've asked me first, then that's what I should do, because out of loyalty or etc. So it's really trying to change my mindset now into this very current pattern that I have, to say what actually is the best result for me, and all of it, I'm very replaceable in any of those opportunities, and they're all businesses that want to, of course, run their business. So it's about just going, well, it's putting me first, and what values do I find that are most aligned to where I want to go. And I can sometimes get caught up too in the ego of going, oh well, this one here has, it has this status, or this one here, I'll be able to work at this level. And so I'm just trying to weed through all of that sort of residual stuff to go, okay, no, let's actually just bring this down to what is going to light me up and have my values most aligned. So very poignant and very tactical to do right now. So thank you very, very much. I'm going to go and sit tonight and actually just go through that process. So I found it very useful.
Yeah. And have you noticed the yes, no, maybe?
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of the there's one that I definitely am leaning towards, but it's also up in the air and it won't know if it goes ahead. So I can work on it for a while, but it may not have a full go ahead until end of August. So that's the yes one that I've sort of got. There's a maybe one that has just come up as of Friday. So that one's an interesting one. I haven't really thought about too much yet. Need a bit more info. So I've got to get a bit more curious about that. And then there's a no one, which I'm feeling in my body is the one that I'm currently on, that I just feel like I need to move away. And I asked for a couple of things in that role to do the extension, and they haven't come to the party with that. So I kind of feel like that's also, them showing me that they're not valuing what, I've done over the last 18 months. So, yeah, so it's sort of already fitting into that part that there's a definite sort of yes, a pretty much a no that I'm feeling, and then a maybe, but I just need to make sure that I've got the right thinking around it. So this process will really help. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks for sharing. Would anyone else like to share or have a question? Kate, I see you. I'll ask to unmute.
I was sitting at a desk and then I am not now.
Laying back on the bed, that's okay. You can watch from anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know. You've unmuted me, but I didn't have a lot to say.
I saw you moving your
Yes, decision making is a huge thing because I constantly question myself. I think slowing down, like noticing, like even this morning, I started getting agitated about something, and I was like, "This doesn't feel good." I had to fill out some documents, and I'm still waiting for the the answers. But I was like, I'm not fine with just doing this.
Yep.
But I am very likely to try, and I like the one where you quickly deal with something.
Mm-hmm.
Sit in the discomfort. I'm always trying to just make it go away.
Yeah.
So I think being aware of that, I'm quite quick to either make decisions, or if there's confrontation, to try and get rid of it.
Yeah.
When that doesn't help. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really common. It's really common. Yeah. So it's good that you know that process. And
sometimes I feel like I don't really know. Like, I think we haven't done the goals. We've been working on other stuff. I feel like I need just a really solid goals or something, or I forget them or something, to then use them to make decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I feel a bit lost, I guess, when I'm like, what are my goals to I don't know. I think I'm just probably just doing it, but when you look at it on paper.
Yeah, I think looking at the resistance too, because often when we find it hard to create something, right? Like it's constantly coming up, so it's like, oh, this is interesting. It keeps cycling.
I know when you force things, it doesn't work out.
Right? But
when
also,
you force things, geez, look, I've really pushed some stuff in the past.
Yeah.
Every step, and I don't know, my mum brought me up to be a fighter.
Yes.
But actually, it was just probably not my path. That's what I did think was interesting. External validation, making decisions I was like, well, a whole bunch of the things that I've done just to like look good for other people, like, or what my mum thought what I thought other people would think was good for me. Yeah. So I kind of
Yeah.
drifted off into those thoughts whilst I was listening to you. Who
Well,
am I?
yeah, yeah, right. Like
Who
this is
am
what we
I?
ask ourselves. Yeah,
That's where I'm at a bit. Yeah.
yeah,
Who really am I? Yeah. Like so much of me was like all this other stuff. So I'm still a bit stuck on that, like noodling around with who am I?
yeah.
What not, you know, beliefs, misguided beliefs given to you from your family in your childhood. Yeah, anyway, I could go on a bit, but yeah, so that stuff's like, and then there's just me. I don't feel like I'm as exciting as I used to allude to be.
There's you, and you are, and this is the interesting thing, right? So, you're in the process of discovery, right? Exploration, and so maybe that's also part of why goals aren't so clear just yet, because
Yeah.
you're exploring and discovering yourself. Who am
And
I?
also when it's okay to like, I'm sort of scared to try things, and I was saying I was like, or to go to new things or try different things. It's like, you know what? I can go once to something and go, I love this, or go, I really didn't like that, and just don't go back. Like, because I'm
Yeah,
thinking about learning a bit more about myself and like, joining some clubs or a group or. But in the past, I would have just stuck it out because I felt like it was a failure if I didn't. Instead of just going, nah, it's not for me, mate.
I love that you bring that in, because when we're learning about ourselves, it's exactly what we do. What do I like and what do I dislike?
Yeah.
It's like, and honoring that and be like, okay, and this is what, when we're young,
Spent all my life pleasing other people and not ever like, I don't know, forcing myself to do stuff that didn't feel right because I was convinced that it was some deficiency in me.
yeah, there you go. So yeah, and when we're young and not taught the different ways to explore,
Mm.
and it's not cultivated, then yeah,
But
we
decision making's really confusing.
yeah, yeah. And the last thing I wanted to bring in too
Yeah.
is, we need to understand that goals, some people can have, like different beliefs around goals, but goals are really grounding. So if I have a goal, then I'm creating something where I'm saying to myself, I am working and focusing on this, like I'm working towards this. So if I'm feeling like I haven't quite figured things out just yet, or if I have a fear, subconscious, it might be, we don't even know it's there. If I have a fear of being locked into something,
Yeah.
and that's where the resistance may come in, and that's where, that's where, like, we can sometimes have resistance around goals too. So I'm not saying that that's yours, but what I'm saying is these are like the different layers of why.
Because I would get so determined on something that it would be everything, and then it, for whatever reasons, I don't want to do it anymore, and then it's like
Yeah,
do every ounce of my being to do that thing, and I'm like, I just want to be a little bit more chill, man. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Like,
what a goal will do
like,
is, yeah, and what a goal will do is help you stay on track. And that's where, if you're someone that likes to have that freedom of like letting, walking away from something, then that's why goals can be a little bit tricky too.
oh, yeah, okay.
So that, and this is just like, this is just me making it up as well.
Yeah.
Like just giving different scenarios around goals and like how people can think about them differently on a subconscious level.
Yes. No, I always thought I had huge goals. I was always goaling everything, and then sort of burnt myself out. And then it's like, I think maybe I'm scared of goals because, like, I keep saying
Yeah.
I haven't done any goals with you, but maybe I'm the one who's like not forcing you to do it with me.
Right?
Oh.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's like, yeah, anytime something cycles where it's like, I still haven't done this, I still haven't done, it's like, oh, I'd get curious about the resistance.
Why am I not doing that?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like it's because I don't know. I don't know the answer, or I won't like the answer, or I'll have to do something I don't want to do. I don't know.
Often, if we don't know, but we are avoiding it without realizing we're avoiding it, there's just some resistance there. That's what that is.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I'll have to noodle over that this afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
if I don't have any too challenging decisions to make that have to like test all the things I've learned today.
amazing. How did you go with the yes, no, and maybe?
Um, I don't trust myself
Okay.
because I'm stuck on some decisions I've already made. I keep going back instead of forward and thinking about decisions I've already made. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think when you really know, you used to say to me, "Is it light or heavy?"
Mhm.
That was a really good visual and bodily, like for me to prompt, and that's kind of the yes or no. I did notice when I had to drive into Melbourne this week at like 6 a.m. in the morning. And if that was something I did notice, I was like, and I did it and I was fine. And I was like, if that was something I didn't want to actually do, if I was forcing myself to go in there to do it, then it's not the right thing for me.
Yeah. So, and I like that. What when you spoke first, what came up was, so if I don't trust myself, that's where I would start. So how would I start there? I would self-reflect, or in terms
Why
of
don't I trust
in
myself?
therapy, I would in therapy I would go back and self-reflect on these decisions just to get clarity around, oh, that's what happened there. So then I have, when I start to feel, and then I'll start to like identify with you, what is it like to feel the yes and then have fear come in? What is it like to be impulsive? What is it like to be have the no, but still do
I've
it?
done all of those things.
Yeah. Oh, so have I. We have. This is the human experience.
But I do feel like I have what's it called, the person that sees stuff. I've forgotten the word for it. Like, I'd be like, what's going on there? Why are you feeling funny? You get a rush of something and you're like, I just want this to go away.
Yeah.
At least catching stuff doesn't mean I always like get it right, but I'm at least seeing things. But that
Yes.
was really good to go through that with you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like, yeah, but then what if? But I liked you saying, if you've got to justify the decision, like going, well, I bought this thing, but it was really good and I needed it. It was really cheap and blah, blah, blah. Then,
Yeah.
right. So I'm like, that's a good one. If you're just like, no, this just feels great.
Yeah.
You don't need to be like, oh, then I feel like I'm doing that more though than ever because I don't spend a lot of time. I used to spend a lot of time trying to justify myself.
Yeah. It's a good one. And anytime I start justifying myself, I can now go, oh, what have I missed? And I'll ask the person, what do you see that I might not be able to see right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's if I'm doing that. Yeah, okay. There's lots of interesting things. If you're
Yeah.
naming or blaming, then there's something amiss. If you're like justifying, there's something amiss. There's those sort of like things where you can catch yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Subtleties.
Then
Yeah.
you've got to slow yourself down enough to actually deal with it because, like, anyway.
Thanks, Kate. That's good. I enjoyed hearing your perspective. Well, and if there's any
planning on hiding, but anyway.
what's that?
I was planning on hiding, but anyway.
If there's any other questions, it's all good, Liz. You don't need to come into it or put your video on. I'm happy for you to just listen. But if you've got any questions that you want to type into the chat, you're more than welcome to. Other than that, that's our session for today. The recordings are always up on YouTube, so you can watch the replays and go through it because there's often heaps of information in them. So, yeah, if you ever want to do that. But if not, if that's what we've got today, I will see those of you who are booked in with me in your session. And thanks for coming and participating.
Thank you.
All right. See you later. Bye, everyone.